Welcome back. This is a final segment on AYV's Wake Up Sierra Leone. Now, the Political Parties Regulation Commission, PPLC, has recommended to political parties to abolish street rallies. The commission noted that over the years, these rallies have posed serious threats on the security of the country. They made this recommendation in a press conference on campaign modes and nomination criteria for political parties ahead of the June 24th multi-tier elections. So this morning, to talk on this and PPLC's preparation ahead of the elections, we have Olusogo David, Executive Secretary, Political Parties Regulation Commission, and possibly we'll have a political analyst. We're hoping he comes by. Good morning and welcome to Wake Up Salon.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, this move, you know, your recommendation, rather, I should put it, to remove political rallies, I'm sure it was not happily received from both political parties, since a lot of, you know, emphasis has been placed on these rallies. What was the findings, or what came to this, brought you to this conclusion to abolish it?
Of course, it's no hidden secret that over the years, we've been faced with a series of political disturbances, more so during campaign periods. And we've actually carefully did a case study of almost all of the elections we've had in the post-war era. And we've been able to see that most of the issues and most of the political instability we do experience ensue during campaign periods, especially when political parties move out on the streets to have the street rallies. So the commission actually decided to have a conversation with political parties as well as other stakeholders to see what we can do to remedy the situation. As a commission, we did not shove it on political parties, and that's the reason why we called for the conference on Monday, the 27th, for us to have the national discussions. What are the pros and the cons of street rallies? How helpful have they been in our democratic dispensation? And it's up to the parties to tell us whether they like it or they want us to abolish it. And that was exactly what happened. We had the representatives of political parties in that conference. We had the media. We had other civil society organizations and development partners. They were all gathered together on that day. And the conversation was up to the political parties to decide. As a commission, we did not have any imposition. We did not have any plans in terms of which model to use. We wanted to have a national discourse.
You know, was the Sierra Leone police part of this gathering? Because, you know, a lot of responsibility has been placed on them for the security of those who go to rallies. Were they present?
Of course. We have the IGP was actually present, and we have the NSCOT, that's the National Security Coordinator. He was also part of the conference. So it was a packed conference of all stakeholders within the management of elections, as well as our donor partners and the political parties who are the primary stakeholders.
And what's the perspective of the Sierra Leone police on this call?
Of course, it was the parties. They actually had discussions and they found out that, according to them, street rallies haven't paid off. What really happened, street rallies really heightened the problems, heightens abuse of drugs, heightens political disturbances. And at the end of the day, for us at the commission, we are particular about the ordinary citizens, the members of the parties. What messages do they get from their leaders during street rallies? They don't. So it was the parties that actually resolved that we think this is the best way to go. Let us put a ban on street rallies. And now campaigns will be done in designated areas where police will actually effectively provide security for all the parties in those designated areas. And members of political parties and supporters will have the opportunity to walk into those areas and have the time to actually ask their leaders questions and hold them accountable to the responses they'll give to them.
When you say the political parties are in agreement, is it unanimously, or do you have just majority of the political parties agreeing?
It was unanimously agreed by all the members present, save for the APC, who actually agreed. They only said that, well, they pleaded with the commission and the Sierra Leone police to ensure that a level playing field is actually created, that when one party's member is actually processing for them not to think that they will actually say these supporters from these parties will actually arrest because we consider them to be actually having street rallies, whilst another party will have the same and they will leave them. So that's that's all. It's just like a request ensuring that there's a level playing field. But other than that, all the parties unanimously agreed.
Now let's look at the alternative to the rally. Before now, what happened was during the rallies, you would have groups move from certain areas and proceed to the area of convergence. And in some instances, they would be attacked by opposite supporters of other political parties. And there are times when it was actually at the convergence point, or when the large group had been together, that other members of other political parties would somehow just turn to them and there would be eruptions of violence. Now the alternative to get them to converge at a particular location comes back to a group of people could gather from one location and say, let's proceed together to head to that location. And again, the measures to prevent another political party supporter or fanatic from intruding in the space of another party that is converging at a particular location. So it comes back to how much of the problem does the alternative solve?
It solves a whole lot of problem. One of the major problems it will actually solve. Now, we all see elements. I'm sure all of us have actually seen rallies over the years. Objectively, how beneficial has it really been to the ordinary members of these parties?
So our focus now is not just about the benefits, it's about the security measures and how the alternative could be the solution, preventing all the violence that erupts during the rallies.
And so that's the reason, like we've actually adopted this particular model. We'll actually be drawing up regulations together with the political parties and the security sector after the nomination process. So those will be all of the things that we'll actually discuss. But it's more securitized because you don't have large people converging on the streets, moving towards the designated location. You'll have some skeletal groups of people that will actually move into that particular location. And once they are within the confines of the particular locality, that their political actor will be actually sending message to them. You have the security sectors providing the necessary security. So it reduces a whole lot of security threats. It reduces a whole lot of political intimidation and violence. And I'll actually just remind you, way back in constituency 110, when we had a rerun, there was a moment when the APC had their rallies. Allegedly, they went to the house of the candidates for the SLPP, and a house was actually burnt, and other things happened. We all know. What happened the following day? The commission had to issue a press release putting a ban on rallies. Had it not been for that ban on rally, it should have been catastrophic. So it's not the very first time we've been doing it. We've done it in other isolated by-elections where tension is really high, and it has worked well. So the parties have actually seen that it's a very good model that will reduce the risk of political intimidation, that will actually reduce the risk of political violence. At the end of the day, what we're all craving for is peace. And what we all desire is to have a very smooth electoral process where even citizens would even be aware that we are going through an electoral process. So our primary objective, and the primary objective of the political parties that were present in that conference, was to model something that will actually help in maintaining the peace. And at the end of the day, what is more important for us as a commission, the ordinary members of the party, who are the owners of those parties, will have the opportunity to have an interface with their leaders, ask them questions, and those leaders will now have the time to respond to their questions and queries. So they are always accountable to their membership at all times.
You regulate the political parties. I suppose you also work with the CSL to, hang heads together. Another thing I notice is how, of course, the CSL does have an electoral calendar that stipulates when campaign, for example, is supposed to commence and when it's supposed to end. Now, we've seen some of these political parties, beating the gun on that, campaigning when campaign period is not declared, it's not the official campaign period, but they're campaigning either through mainstream media, social media, even on the streets with billboards, where the SLPP and the APC are now decorating our streets with billboards. How is the PPRC regulating the activities of the political parties to ensure that they work in line with the electoral calendar and they're not doing anything they're not supposed to be doing?
Definitely, we've held discussions with the leadership of political parties generally, and we've actually informed them about the do's and don'ts, so they are actually aware of it. And like you've actually noticed on the streets, you'll see fleets of banners around. We also intend to hold a meeting with them next week to tell them about their roles and responsibilities ahead of the general elections. Indeed, yes, you are perfectly correct. We are actually yet to have an official declaration of the start of campaigns. And we've been seeing, on social media, some political actors actually campaigning. So we've held discussions with them in the past. The commission is not, like what others will actually say that the commission wants to close the political space. We don't want to close the political space. But in as much as we don't want to close the political space, political parties must also adhere to laws and principles governing the process of electioneering. So we've held meetings with them, and definitely next week we'll be holding another meeting. And I'm sure the media will be obliged with the outcome of those meetings.
What were the findings in terms of the nomination criteria that was part of the discourse that happened?
Of course, we wanted, as a commission, we wanted to inform our political parties, which are primary stakeholders, of their roles and responsibilities in tandem with Section 35(1) of the 1991 Constitution. And we, aside of the campaign modes that we'll actually discuss with them, the second arm of that particular conference was the nomination criteria for political parties. In accordance with the provisions of the Political Parties Act number 25 of 2022, there are so many things that political parties must fulfill before they can be of good standing and before they can actually provide ECSL with their nomination list. One of which is having a functional party office. A functional party office is not when you actually hire a particular room within a 4-room apartment that is domestically used and you say that's a party office. That's not a functional party office. It is not about PPRC, it's about what is in the law. So we just reminded them that ahead of the nomination, you have set criteria you should meet as political party. That is just one. Aside that, they should have a lease agreement of 5 years. That is in the law. It's either you own the property. If you own the property, you must give us the documentation to prove ownership, or you present us a lease agreement showing that you've leased that particular premise for a period of 5 years. Aside that, we also have pre-electoral financial disclosure. According to the Act, 21 days after the pronouncement of a public election that those parties intend to participate in, they should declare their assets and liabilities to the Commission. And they also have an obligation to do that post-election, 60 days after the end of the election that they've competed for. Quite apart from that, it's also in the law that they should submit their audited financial statements at the end of March, the 31st of every year. So what we actually told them was to remind them of the provisions within the Act, and this time around the Commission is going to be very robust that political parties should adhere to those particular norms, to those particular laws governing their operations. Other than that, they will definitely have ECSL not to accept their nomination, because we will write to ECSL that they are not of good standing. It's
good you spoke about the robustness of the PPRC, because what caught my attention when you're making some of the recommendations from the PPRC is the fact that they should submit what they have, their assets.
Yeah.
So, in terms of follow-up, many a time, they don't get to submit all of them. What would you do in those circumstances? So
that's the reason why we held the conference, to remind them of their responsibilities as contained in the Act.
But what's the penalty?
Yeah.
The penalty is, they know the penalty. We've told them that their nomination
won't be accepted. The public needs to know.
We've told them that their nomination won't be accepted by ECSL. That is it. They have to comply. It's the law. The PPIC is not devising new laws. No, we are not. It is what is in the statutes. And that's it. They have to go by it. And it's not something fresh. It has been in the Political Parties Act of 2002. So what we did is to remind them that in this election, you have to fulfill the criteria for you to have your nomination accepted. And another most important is for them to constitute the organs of their party. Most of these parties have not constituted their organs. Then how can you compete for a national election without you practicing the internal democracy within your political party? So those are all the criteria. And it's not that the PPIC is, people may tend to say that why is the PPIC coming out with all of these criteria now? No, we haven't. It's in the Act. It's not something strange, it's not something new. So what we did is to just remind them, because we don't want at the end of the day for them to say, we were not reminded. Yes, we shouldn't remind you because the Political Party Act is governing your operation. But what we've done, we've been magnanimous enough to remind them of their responsibilities and to remind them of those criteria leading to nomination.
Another area that caught the attention of many Sierra Leoneans and, you know, the AYV, which we did a story on, was where these posters, as you made mention, and it has escalated to the point wherein, you know, political parties are accusing each other of disrupting or damaging each other posters. Where do you come into all of this as a body?
That's the reason why I said we've held meetings with them in the past, and we'll be having another meeting with them next week to discuss all of these abnormalities. And once we've held that meeting, of course, the public and the media will be obliged with the outcome of those meetings. Of course, it's against the acts because it's part of the Code of Conduct. And thankfully, the Code of Conduct is now subsumed into the Act, so which means the Code of Conduct is now sanctioned by law. And there are punitive measures, there are fines as prescribed by the Act for those conducts.
But the question now is, how effective is that when, again, it's not like it was last week or early this week that, we've seen billboards of campaign, direct campaign by the APC and the SLPP all across the streets of Freetown. And obviously, I'm sure you people at the PPRC, when you drive by to and from work or about your businesses, you see these billboards. There has been no action the public knows about taken by the PPRC against the APC and the SLPP for decorating the streets with campaign billboards when it's not time for campaign. Also, they go to places and campaign. They go to public spaces and they're giving direct campaign messages when it's not yet time for campaign. So how effective are those laws, the regulations? How effective is the PPRC regulating these political parties? Or is it that the APC and the SLPP are above the law?
I'll start by saying that no one is above the law. We are all guided by the dictates of the law. So there is no party that is absolutely above the law. And in terms of regulation, you'll bear with me that the Commission has been doing that effectively. Yes, of course, on the part of the billboards, when we actually saw them starting to mount up those billboards, we called them to meetings.
Yes, they're still mounting more.
Yes, I'm coming.
Almost every week you see new locations.
I'm coming. We called them to a meeting. We dialogue. We told them that it's not time for campaign, so pull down those billboards. And we intend to do a final meeting next week. Now, once we are done with that, we now move exactly to what is prescribed in the Act. And what is prescribed in the Act is that we have to warn. If they fail, we can actually fine. When they fail, we can suspend or we deregister. But assuming we've taken one of the most draconian action to suspend, what should have been the public outcry in terms of the regulative power of the PPIC? I'm sure you, the journalists, will always say that, come on, the PPIC is now chasing and clamping the political space. We don't want to do that. So what we believe in, let us interface with the parties, let's discuss with them, and thereafter, if they fail, then we can actually make use of the law. And that's exactly what we've been doing.
Interface without repercussion for actions could also lead them to interpret the PPRC to just be a toothless bulldog.
Well, it's up to their interpretation, but that's not the case. 2 or 3 weeks back, when the main opposition party flouted provisions within the Act, we served them a warning letter. When the similar action was repeated, we fined them. The same 2 weeks back, when the ruling SLPP government breached provisions of the Act, we served them a warning letter. And they wrote back to say they'll actually ensure that the membership conform to the dictates of the law. So for people to say, well, it's a perception of everybody, so of people to say that PPIC is not working. But we have been, and we are regulating political parties. But again, we have to do it cautionably, because we don't want to close the political space, and we don't want to be seen as an entity that want to muzzle.
But how do you create
parties.
that balance? On one hand, you don't want to muzzle the space. On the other hand, you want to ensure checks and balances and compliance to rules and regulations.
No, not muzzling the space does not preclude adherence to statutes regulating or governing political processes. Like I said, as an institution, firstly, we try to engage. We discuss. When that failed, then we go by the law. But we can just, for every transgression, we just can't say, oh, we're going to suspend you, we're going to ban you. No, we have to dialogue. Because in some of those conversations, those political actors, those political leadership have told us that we are not even aware who is displaying those banners on our behalf.
And you buy that?
We don't buy that, but we gave them the time because they asked that we should give them time to do some investigation. And once we are done with our dialogue stage, then we go by the dictates of the act.
Let's go quickly.
But at the end of the day, we like I said, in as much as we don't want to close the political space, as purported by some political actor, that we do, but we are also guided by the tenets of the law.
Let's go quickly over to some messages, which is just reaffirming what Phoebe is saying. It states here from Momo Joanna that PPLC should not only call political parties and remind them without taking action, or they will continue to do the wrongs. Another one, interesting one, says street rally from Bangura Francis. Street rallies can sometimes signal which political party is going to win. It sends signal internally and externally. Now they have to abolish it. It's not going to help political parties. The responsibility of the Sierra Leone police is to protect lives as well and properties. So if they would, they had to abolish the rally. When political party supporters are out for campaign, the police must be vigilant, meticulous and robust to protect the people and properties. I don't think you need to abolish street rally is a good idea. Phoebe, is your connection okay?
Yeah, we could just limit it to those messages.
Probably in response to that particular text, I'll just say that rallying is not the end of it. Having thousands of people on the streets is not a prerequisite to you winning an election. What is important is the message. And this time around, we want the 2023 election to be based on messaging. What do those political leaders have for the people of Sierra Leone? It's not about the dancing. You can have all the crowds, but at the end of the day, what is more important, when that citizen is in front of the poll, that is when the most important decision is taken about which party should I vote for. They can actually be supporters of Party A or Party B. They can actually join the street rallies for Party A or Party B. But the most important and the crucial moment for every citizen is when you are in front of the ballot to take a decision of which party you should vote for. That comes about messaging, policy. What policies have our political actors? What policies do they have for us as a country? What are their plans for us as citizens? And that is exactly what we want this election to be. It should be idea-based, policy-based, and message-based, and not funfair-based.
David, what are the greatest challenges of the PPRC currently in the dispensation of your work, especially this election period?
Hate speech. Speech is one. Hate speech is one of the greatest challenges we are currently faced with. And that's the reason why the Commission constituted a hate speech committee. And our findings are so heartening that political parties, political leaders who are charged with the responsibility of disseminating messages of economic development, messages of transformation, are those sending messages of hate. And it's the greatest concern of the Commission. And what we are doing in tackling that is that definitely it's going to be difficult to tackle hate speech because it comes from everywhere, from the social media, from those outside Sierra Leone, from those within. At the end of the day, it's so difficult. But what we want to do is to ensure that political leaders are accountable. We hold them responsible. We hold them accountable for such inciting statements. And that's one of the greatest problems we are faced with. And that's actually the reason why we will be having a program that is titled Unhindered Access. And that particular program will target our traditional leaders. We want to have a conversation with them that irrespective of the political party, irrespective of where the particular individual is coming from, he or she has got the right to traverse around all chiefdoms within this country.
I'm curious though, how do you handle it in a way where you sieve through getting perhaps the individual who perpetrates that hate speech, whichever, how do you sieve through getting the individual accountable and perhaps not necessarily the entire party taking the fall for what the individual does? Like, how does it work?
So that's the reason why it's one of the greatest problems we are faced with. So what we are doing is to partner.
Who do you hold accountable? The politician or the political party the politician belongs to?
It depends. It depends who the message is coming from. Assuming the message is actually coming from a politician, then you hold that politician accountable. If the message is coming from an unknown individual, then definitely we have to do investigations. And we cannot do that in isolation with the cyber department of CID to ensure that we can actually track that particular individual and bring him or her to book. So it's something that is very difficult. Hate speech, it's so difficult to tackle. But what we want to do is to ensure that our political leaders are actually informing their membership to desist from such acts.
Mama
we
Joanna,
think if those leaders vehemently warn and caution their membership, and because of the love and respect those members have for them, I'm sure it's something we can tackle. Okay. We cannot erode, we cannot eradicate, but we can actually minimize.
Okay, there's another option for you here from Momo Joanna. It's a message. It states that PPLC, the alternative to state rallies, is not going to solve the problem. It's have you thought of it, or is it good? We limit them to radio and television. Was that also an option? Did you consider that?
Yes, we did, but again, we don't want to infringe on people's rights of association, people's rights to gather, and people's rights of movements. So that's the reason why we decided, well, it's not about the commission, the political party decided that if we are going to put a ban, like they've done, there is now a ban on street rallies, we'll have designated localities where our political leaders will actually be opportune to address their membership. And during those gatherings, they will be able to inform them about their policies, about their intention for the states and the citizens as well. Aside that, again, what we are also going to do is to ensure that the media space, each political actor, each political party have an even access to the media. That one political party will not have more advantage over the other. So this is a conversation we're going to have definitely with almost all the key media outlets within Freetown and within Sierra Leone. That we should have an equitable distribution of airtime for political parties. And we'll definitely have that conversation together with SLAJ and the IMC as well, because they are the regulating institutions, you know, for that particular sector.
David, as we round up quickly, again, out of curiosity, if peradventure the alleged perpetrator of hate speech is President Bio, does the PPRC have the power to hold him accountable?
All I'll say is that we are all subjects to the laws. Nobody is above the law. And definitely, what we do as an institution is to ensure that the provisions of the law, the provisions governing the states, are adhered to by everybody.
Thank you very much, David, from the Political Parties Registration Commission, talking to us here this morning about, well, the activities of political parties as we head towards the June 24th multi-tier elections. Thanks for your time. We appreciate you being a part of the program.
Thank you.